Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Pastor's Potluck Podcast. On today's episode, we have some sensitive conversation around alcohol and substance abuse, and we wanted to give you this fair warning in case you are listening in the car with kids. And but we also wanted to highlight just how real life can get and how God can save us and free us from those addictions that we struggle with each and every single day. God has been so good to each and every single one of us here at the Pastor's Potluck, and we like to talk about those things that He has freed us from. So we hope that you enjoy today's episode, and we'll get right into it. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Pastor's Potluck Podcast. Here on the Pastor's Potluck, it's similar to a normal potluck where you might get something that you want and there may be something that you just want to pass up altogether. And that's okay. There's something here for everybody. Our goal here is to encourage you and maybe in the process entertain you. If you're ready, let's dig in. Well, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Pastor's Potluck Podcast. Things may look a little bit different this morning. I'm not going to lie to you, okay? Will and I, we had our Bible study this morning, and we went to IHOP and had breakfast, and I had the pancake combo. You had the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
So it's 2 eggs, hash browns, 2 pieces of meat, 2 pancakes, and I felt that if I lifted up anything heavy, I already feel like a bag of concrete that's been sitting out in the weather like for so long, it hasn't been used, and you're like, dang, dude, what a waste.
I'm 90% stomach right now.
I'm feeling all distended and I'm so sluggish. So we had everything set up from the extra point, and I said, I'm just going to take the background away, and let's just see how this works. Well, those other tables and chairs that we move every single week are so stinking heavy. God almighty.
It's a lot of effort when we can just get right here and still give everybody the same show,
Yeah. Well, I think like 90% of what everybody consumes this is listening to it anyways.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
So we have like a few faithful people that watch it, and that's great. I guess they like to see mannerisms, and, I get animated. I talk with my hands a lot. And
I'm right there with you on that one.
It's weird. Dude, people point it out all the time.
Yeah, and they probably do it too. So it's like, maybe they just don't want to feel that bad about it.
I don't know. For me, it's like, I use my hands at like the worst times ever. It's not like a worst situation, but it's just it's weird. I'm just like, hey, how's your day going? And like my arms just going nuts, and people are like, what are you doing?
I get too excited, and I guess I become like a cat, and I just knock stuff over,
I've seen those where they just like knock stuff off to the edge really quick. Yeah. Stupid cats. I don't like cats. But anyways, well, welcome. Well, first podcast, right?
Yep, first one.
Ever.
This
is exciting, guys. Are you going to get hit with the double mystery meat today?
I'll take a double portion.
I don't want double nothing. I want a double nap, dude, from breakfast. My goodness. I remember just walking up here, and I was like, this is a bad idea. Anyways. Well, we have Will on today. Will is the intern here at Southridge Church. He's working very closely with Pastor Scott and just kind of teaching him the ins and outs of ministry, seeing what it looks like. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But Will, you have an interesting story. I want to say you and I went through a lot of similar things, but today is not about me. It's about you. And I just want to talk a little bit and get into your story. What does your childhood look like? Mom, dad situation, just the whole nine. Just let us know like what it was like growing up and your family dynamic and and how all that is.
It it's very Leave It to Beaver, but with a good dose of redneck in there.
Yeah, get a little bit closer with the microphone.
Yeah, and it wasn't too bad. Dad had me in sports, took me everywhere, and he had a nursery at his office, so we were always with him or
Yeah.
with mom. Like, it wasn't like, somebody who goes through a lot of things like that, you think that they'll have a bad upbringing or something.
Yeah.
But for me, it was good. Life was good. I got all the toys I wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And, yeah, I think really when I was a child, the biggest thing is I was just a fraidy cat. And that has kind of expounded itself into my adult life,
Yeah.
just in different ways.
Um, so mom and dad, good situation. You have any siblings?
Yeah, yeah. I got a little sister and a big brother. And me and my little sister, we've been thick as thieves for as long as I can remember. I had these Halo action figures.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
she had Barbies, and we'd hang out, and I'd play Halo action figures while she's playing with her Barbies. But man, me and my brother, we were always button heads.
Yeah.
And he played sports, and I played sports, and Dad would set us up in the front yard with our gear on, and we'd have to go head to head, like doing tackle drills and stuff for football.
Oh yeah.
So it was always kind of a competition between me and him.
Yeah.
And I think it was kind of because he was the firstborn, had his own room, and then I came along and he had to share it.
Oh yeah. Dude, I had to share a room with my brother. It was it was always that way. But did y'all grow up in this area?
Yeah, yeah. Kind of in the same 10-mile radius for my whole life. Like, first we lived in St. Albans on Lincoln Avenue, and then around second grade we moved to Cross Lanes.
Yeah.
And then around 2007 we moved to Tornado, which is basically on the outskirts of St. Albans.
Yeah. And you middle school, high school, all in that same area, St. Albans area?
Yeah, yeah. Basically it was Nitro and St. Albans, and I knew people from both sides, so like there was always that kind of rivalry between them two.
Yeah.
And I was just I was straddling the fence with them. I had friends over there, and then friends on this side of the river, and
Yeah. Now, how was high school for you? Like, were you everything still like peachy keen? Was it like Will starting to get a mind of his own and trying to make his own decisions? Like, what was that like?
I was girl crazy, like any other red-blooded man.
Yeah.
And I never really liked school. So once high school hit, I kind of started missing more and more. And I actually ended up getting in trouble with the truant officer a couple times.
Ooh.
Yeah. Which actually led to me dropping out of school so I could get out of the trouble.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I always joke that I dropped out of school, but I got my GED a week later.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yep.
Now, was it while you were in high school, were you starting to get into like your party phase of life?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I wasn't much of a drinker, though. I was a pothead through and through. Like,
Yeah.
I'd get stoned and play video games. That was
Yeah.
I was that stereotypical, long-haired, what's up, dude, kind of guy.
Yeah. Like you were basing your existence off of Pauly Shore in the 90s.
Yep.
Wasting the juice, like that type of guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%. Skateboarder. That's all I worried about.
Yeah. So after you drop out and get your GED, and this is where I think that our stories just like really, really begin to like mirror themselves. After you get your GED, what are you doing? Like, are you trying to work, or like, are you just starting to get into like your big party phase, or?
Well, I started working for Dad when I was 16, so I always kind of had a job, and I think that's kind of another reason why I didn't really worry about school is because like I'm just going to work.
Yeah.
And that around 18, 19, I tried college, and while working, but I was getting into my party phase, and that pot smoking had turned into drinking every weekend and
Yeah.
just seeking out a good time. Not taking care of my responsibilities, not worrying about anything. I just that's what it was. Is that I just wanted to party.
Yeah. It was like anytime you had like any kind of money come in from work, it was like I know exactly what this is going to.
Yep, 30 rack of Natty Light.
Yeah. Now, so was it ever like for me because I often made these decisions and looking back on it, whenever I would get a paycheck and or any kind of like tip money because I worked in a bar, I would always go, okay, like I know I need gas, but how little can I get away with
Mm-hmm.
before, and so like the rest of my money could go to partying and stuff like that. Did you ever
Oh yeah.
like you ever like make conscious decisions like that? You're like, okay, I've got $100. Okay, so I know I need at least like 15 to get back.
I could make $20 last all week. That'll get me from where I need to go.
Yeah. That's one of like the weird things. Like whenever you start to become like addicted to stuff, you look at money like that.
Oh yeah.
Like you're like, okay, like I'm not paying for my insurance, but I've got to pay for a car. I got to pay for gas, and so like, like it's weird. Like you become like a really budget conscious individual because you're like, I got to get my fix, but I've got to be able to drive to go get my fix.
See, my plan was I'd get paid, and then I'd blow my money, and then I'd kite checks to pay my bill, because I'd have it set up as automatic withdrawals.
Yeah.
And then I'd put my account in a negative,
Oh
and
Lord.
just pay it back. It was a mess.
Yeah, that's not a way to live. Dude.
No, ever since I got sober, my bank account has not gone into negative once.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good for you, Will. So how long is this party phase for you? This drinking stage, this living for Will, and only satisfying like what you want to do.
I'd say from 18 to 26. I'm kind of just doing whatever I want, drifting off from the path. Like in high school, I went to church. I was in church and kind of I guess I wasn't really involved in it, but I was there.
Yeah.
So I was always kind of consumed with the thought of me and what I want. But that got ramped up, or started once I became an adult.
Yeah.
And I was going to college, and everybody was partying in college, and I didn't notice it at the time, but I partied a whole lot harder than they did.
Yeah.
There was one time in Morgantown where I fell through a door and broke my buddy's door in his apartment, and everybody there, they weren't doing things like that.
Yeah.
They weren't getting hurt and all that, but
They were holding it together.
yeah. And I thought I was just having a good time. That's what kids our age did. They're partying.
Yeah.
I justified it. And slowly, as I'm getting into my later 20s, like the mid-20s, 22, I got a DUI. Still didn't think it was a problem at that point. I was like, oh, that happens. It's West Virginia. Everybody and their brother's got a DUI.
Yeah.
Luckily, nobody got hurt. The God's grace in that is really good, because I got put with a blow and go in my car, and I had it for like 6 years, and I didn't get it out until I quit drinking.
Yeah.
So luckily I wasn't able to drink and drive ever again.
Yeah, for sure.
But after that, I kept on drinking, and I started noticing that, there aren't as many people around. My buddies aren't hanging out with me as much as they used to.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, nah, well, I guess I got to find some new people to drink with.
Yeah.
And I found some people that drank harder than me, drank just as hard or harder than me, and used substances that I was not using at the time, but had started to.
Yeah.
Through, getting to know them, and it's just what they were doing, so I joined in.
Yeah.
And slowly that group fell apart, and then there was a smaller group inside that group of harder users and drinkers.
Yeah.
And that's who I started hanging out with.
What type of stuff were you using, if you don't mind me asking?
Cocaine.
Yeah.
Cocaine and Adderall and Vladimir vodka.
Oof.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a vicious cycle because it was like you would drink just to kind of numb everything, and then do the uppers to kind of like get back up, and then you just do that. Like it's not just like a cycle one night or the other. Like this is all in the same night, multiple times.
Yep.
So you would like for me, I would drink, then do a whole bunch of uppers, which would perk me back up because drinking makes you sluggish,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're like, well, I don't want to be all like completely wired out of my mind, so you start drinking again, and then and I would do that cycle 3 or 4 times in a night.
Yeah, just
Like
yo-yoing back and forth.
exactly. It's just like a yo-yo. I mean, gosh, that's a great analogy.
And it seemed normal. It seemed like,
Yeah, it did. It until yeah, for me it was like I had to take a step back because I was like, man, I'm really starting to do this stuff at like 6 o'clock, like the sun is still out. Like I always had like a rule. I was like, don't do anything until like the sun went down.
yep.
But then whenever I was like starting to break those rules, I was like, man, this is starting to get out of hand.
Yep.
Did you ever have like a aha moment where you were like, dude, like what in the world am I doing?
Yeah, I used to do this thing on Saturdays, day drinking, and me and one of those buddies, he had a big old bag of cocaine, and we had been drinking. We had actually, in that morning, had gotten in trouble with the law down hanging out drinking by the river
Yeah.
at 7 in the morning.
Oh Lord.
Yeah. You can't drink all day unless you start early.
Yeah. Oh Lord.
And well, we went back to house. Dad had just bought this brand new John Deere Gator, and he had I guess he'd come here to work lights. It was a Sunday. He'd come here to work lights, so he had come home after that and took a nap. And I was like, "This is what I'll do. I'll get him while he's asleep. I'll ask him if I can go riding on it." And he thinks he told me no, but I know that he was having a sleep, and he's just like, "Yeah, whatever." We take that out, and we're out on the roads across from Mom and Dad's house, and there's this on some piling on the road where it's falling apart, and it's like a big old drop off right there,
Yeah.
like probably a cliff, honestly. And we're all laughing, having a good time, and I'm not paying attention. I'm riding in this side by side, and I hit that piling and flip it with all of us in it. We're probably about that close to going over that cliff, and I get out of it, and I'm laughing about it at the time, but I honestly think that's when my panic attack started. Because after that, I would think back to how close I was to death right there,
Yeah.
and it would just freeze me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when I started to wake up.
Yeah. I had a moment like that too. It was I'd had conversations with Erica leading up to it about like my drinking was getting out of hand. But I just remember driving home one night, probably 4 in the morning. There's a cop that pulls up right next to me, shines his light in my vehicle. I think I'm maybe doing 50 miles an hour on the highway in Texas, and the speed limit's 75.
Yeah.
And so, and then he just drives off, and I'm going, I've got all this drugs in my pocket. And I'm completely hammered. And I said, that's probably the last time that I ever get away with that. And so, like, it started to.
That was life ending right there.
Yeah.
if you would have got pulled over.
Well, I would have. It'd have been not like lose my life, but my world would have been.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I was married, I had 2 kids at the time, and it was just. It's like, yeah. I mean, I could have lost it all, and been in jail, and then just had that on my record forever, and it just began to, like, every time I was out, still partying and drinking, like I was always thinking about it. Like,
Yep.
Was that the same thing with you? You're like, man, if I start drinking tonight, like, I hope I don't do something stupid like I did last time.
Yeah, that's kind of where the ball started rolling for me. Was I had that sort of wake up call, but I didn't quit drinking.
Yeah.
But when I would drink, it kind of like it exacerbated this panic and anxiety. And through this panic and anxiety, I kind of dug deeper. I dug in a little deeper, started drinking a little harder
Yeah.
to deal with it. And it got to the point where I wasn't drinking with anybody. I was drinking by myself at my house, sitting in front of my computer, just drinking until I fell asleep. And then I'd wake up and just have crippling panic attacks. Like I would just spend all day in a fetal position, just curled up in a ball, going to my parents for reassurance that I'm not dying, but me thinking I'm sitting there on the verge of a heart attack or something.
Yeah.
And it was just so crippling. And then I started, I was praying to the Lord, and I had been like denying him. Like, you can ask my dad. We would sit there and have conversations. And I'm like, well, this is why this is wrong. This is why this is wrong. And I'm thinking it's all wrong, and I haven't even read the Bible.
Yeah.
Well, Dad, I'm having all this fear, and he gives me his Bible, and I start reading it.
Yeah.
And things start making a lot more sense.
Oh, yeah.
It's everything I thought was wrong wasn't actually wrong. It's what I had perceived to be wrong. It wasn't the actual Word of God that I had an issue with. It was what I perceived to be the Word of God.
Yeah. Oof, that's good. It's sometimes like whenever there's so many people that jump to conclusions with anything and every topic, and so they're just like, well, I don't want to serve at church because it's like I don't know anything about running a camera or doing their presentation software, and so like they load themselves up with these lies, and it's just like same thing with the Bible. It's like, how could I ever believe in a God that was just so angry and allows all these things? But like once you open up the Bible and you get to understand like who God was, and like he came to bring life and give it more abundantly, then you're like, oh, okay, like we live in a broken world.
Yeah.
Like we live in a broken world. Like it's not God's fault that it's this way. It's our fault that it's this way. Because we disobeyed him, and so we have sinful nature, and so sin is in the world. And
I spent a lot of time blaming him for it, thinking that this was God's fault. But no, when I came to realize that it was ours, and that even though I thought I was a good person, I changed my perspective into if God were to be looking at me, I wouldn't be as clean as I thought I was.
Yeah.
And, it's when I came to realize that is when I really realized, like, through good works, I'm not going to be saved. I had originally thought that, what kind of God would throw people to hell, because even if good people, just because they didn't believe. But when you come to realize that even our best is not good enough for the Lord, that we need to be cleansed through the blood of Jesus Christ,
Yeah.
then it all makes sense.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people that believe in God and believe that he is real and true that probably don't make it to heaven. It's through the relationship with Jesus.
Yep.
That ultimately is like what allows us to be able to be reconciled to the Father. It's in having that realization of like I need Jesus. Like I need Jesus. Jesus is the one that made the way for it to be possible for us to be able to do that by taking on our sin, dying, and then overcoming the grave. And through that relationship and putting my faith in Jesus and me getting to know him through praying and allowing him to speak in my life, like that, all of that, like it's the way, and there's so much healing that happens whenever you start this relationship with Jesus. Talk about some of the things like whenever you made that decision to become a Christ follower and you are starting out in your faith journey, and like some of the things that you just like naturally over time, you're like, wow, I don't do that anymore. Or like, I haven't even thought of like, had these thoughts or whatever it could be. Like, was there ever like things that you look back on and you're like, man, it's just like it was just like these heavy bags that I've been carrying for so long of addiction and, these panic attacks and not feeling worthy and all of this stuff. Like, and you look back on it and you're like, there was moments that I can look back on and see that God just like healed me from it. Like, talk a little bit about that.
100%. A big one for me is the anxiety. It comes in waves, and it's definitely a learning experience. But I found it has been a great tool for me to get closer to God.
Yeah.
Because I was laying in bed last night. I was having a bout of fear, and a lot of my fear stems from death and worrying about death. And I was sitting there and I was like, how can I worry when I know where I'm going?
Yep.
But then I'm like, well, I guess maybe I'm kind of doubting that. What if that is where we really go? And then I'm like, how can I doubt that when I see what God has done for me already?
Yeah.
And I see him working in my life in such a way that just the knowledge that he's given me, the peace that it gives me, the serenity. It's when I pray, I like to get down on my hands and knees and put my head to the ground. And there is nowhere else in the world that just feels like I am washed in the warmth of peace in the Lord. And that just puts my heart at ease. And anytime I'm feeling like I'm lost and hurting like that, it's when I go to look to the Lord instead of to myself to solve the problem, it goes away.
Yep.
And it's crazy to me because I don't do it all the time, and it's honestly a hard habit to seek out God first in those moments.
Yeah.
But since I've found him, I've learned to start to do that bit more.
Yeah.
And it becomes easier to seek out God in my problems and my struggles. And that's the biggest thing I've seen is just how much easier it is to communicate with him, and to feel him. And it's like I always pray for God to soften my heart every time I pray because I know that my heart is still hard. I have these doubts. But I want him to soften it. And I've noticed through the past 2 years that he has just continually softened it. He's chipped away at it. And and I'm getting there. I'm getting to know his love more and more every day.
Yeah. Yeah, that the lifestyle change is something that is just worked at over time, realizing that whenever something pops up, that I look to the Lord. It's like whenever people want to, get healthy or they want to lose weight, um, we know the things to do to achieve those goals, but sometimes just because it's more comfortable for us, we don't do those things. We stick to what we know and the way that we live. But if I want to rely on Jesus more, I have to rely on Jesus more.
Yep.
If I want to talk to Jesus more, I have to make sure that I'm getting up and praying. And if I know that there's a benefit from that, like in your situation, you say you feel more at peace whenever you're down on your hands and knees and you're praying. The more that you do that, the more that you understand, like, this is the lifestyle that I want to live. It's like if I ever wanted to put on like 30 pounds of muscle, I know that eventually I'm going to have to make some very uncomfortable things to get my butt up and go to the gym to achieve those goals. But, I mean, who wouldn't want 30 pounds of muscle like right now?
Exactly.
Like just instantaneously.
Who doesn't want a relationship with the greatest creator?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like you have to put in the effort to do that.
Yep.
It's just like, I mean, you're married. It's you just can't expect your relationship with your wife just to be good if you're not spending time with her and talking to her.
Yeah, 100%. Right? We were talking about
that.
Same
thing with Jesus.
Yeah. Me and Savannah were talking about that the other day, that she wants us to spend quality time together. I'm sitting there playing a video game. I'm like, we are spending quality time together.
No. Yeah.
But really, it is hard. And, like, I don't know about everybody else, but for me, like, my body, my mind, and I think this is the enemy, but it screams everything against that, to not do it, to not get on my hands and knees and talk to the Lord.
Yeah.
It's because it's not natural. It's supernatural for us to have that relationship.
Yeah. So God's doing this amazing thing in your life. I think one of the highlights, I didn't get to know you very well until probably within the past year. We've done a lot together. You serve on the worship team. You play the guitar with us, and but one of the I heard so many stories on Easter, not this past year, but the year before. We introduced that song, "I Have Seen the Lord." I've seen His love. I've seen His power. I've seen it in, my relationships and what He's done in my life. And so we had everybody come up, or not everybody. We had quite a few people that we reached out to because we knew that God was doing something in their life. And so they would say if it was a husband and a wife that were maybe struggling with something, the wife would say something, and then the husband would say, because we trusted in the Lord, now our relationship is better. The wife would open up, we were fighting and this and that. And the same was for your mom got up and she told the story of week after week and month after month and year after year, I was praying for my son, and he was bound by addiction, and then you got up and you said, "I am the son." And let me tell you what Jesus did in my life. He's healed me. He's freed me from these things. I think out of all of them that day, that's the one that rung home the most because even though I've only been here close to 3 years, ever since I've gotten here, we've been praying for you.
Yeah.
So we've always done this thing where we bring our prayer request as a worship team, and we pray for one another, and we still do that to this day through our messaging app that we use. But I mean, we've always prayed for you. So yeah. I didn't even know what you looked like, to be honest.
Yeah.
But we prayed for you, and so just seeing what God has done in your life. It's just been incredible. Just to kind of have a front row seat, maybe second row. Your family would be your front row.
Yeah,
seat.
Yeah.
But just
you've definitely seen a big chunk of it, though, man.
I know.
You saw we went and grabbed barbecue the day to talk about me getting baptized. You've been on 90% of this journey.
Yeah, except for the party phase.
Yeah. You can see all the good stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the crazy things, you have friends that come to church.
Yeah.
That you've brought to church because they saw and knew the lifestyle that you were living in and seen what God had done in your life, and you've invited them. You're like, hey, give it a shot. And some of your buddies, they don't show up every week, but
they pop up every now and then.
That's every now and then.
It's great.
At least once or twice a month, they're here.
Yeah, I tell you what's the greatest one to me though is seeing my wife just grow stronger with the Lord.
Oh yeah,
and it's. I think it's funny. She's got me making her playlist of worship music now, so that she knows what to sing on Sundays.
Oh yeah.
But she's a month or two ago. She's like, I finally understand the lyrics.
Yeah, yeah. It's just amazing, dude. What God does and what He's doing in your life, and now you're the intern at the church while you're going through seminary. Yep. And trying to get your credentials to be a minister. How weird is that?
From where I was to now.
Yeah, because I've been in the same exact spot that you're in, and it's a weird feeling. You're like, man, just like a year ago,
yeah,
I was doing this, and it's just this contrast of different lifestyles, whenever God gets a hold of you.
It really is, and I think that's a big point as to why I think God uses my anxiety to help me grow in Him.
Yeah.
Because at the beginning of the year, when I was just completely crippled, not able to shower by myself, not able to drive, I was coming to Scott and talking to him about it, and going to therapy and everything. And I was talking to Savannah, and I was like, I was told I was kind of going through a quarter life crisis, but
quarter life,
yeah,
quarter
life,
yeah.
But I was like, maybe I should do something. Maybe I should go to school to study the Bible. And not even 2 weeks later, Scott comes to me. He's like, "Hey, let's go grab lunch, and I got something I want to run by you." And he tells me where he's sitting there eating a $20 grilled cheese.
That's a story in itself.
Yes, it is. And he's like, "Hey, what do you think about interning under me?" And you know, I'm sitting there with a decent job, making okay money. It's a big leap of faith to go from a $40,000 a year job to basically nothing.
Yeah.
And I talked to my parents about it, and I talked to my wife about it, and Savannah, God bless her, she was completely supportive from the get go. And um, it's just I prayed about it and prayed about it, and it seemed too wild to not do. It just looked too much like God
Yeah.
to not do it. And I couldn't sit with myself later on in life and think about not heeding the call of the Lord.
Oh yeah. Yep. Same exact thing. Like I was serving at a church like in a very minimal role, and it was like, hey, do you want to be the interim worship pastor? And so it was like, huh, yeah, like this is what, like I already knew that God had placed this on my life, um, like placed that call on my life. But I just remember like I was, you know, working, making decent money, but then like here I am going work for a church and I'm getting paid like pennies.
It's a leap of faith, man.
It is. It is.
But as you've seen, the Lord takes care of you.
I know. Yeah.
It's wild. It is wild how He does it.
Yeah.
And you just got to put that trust in Him. And
Yeah. Well, it's like He's always working for the good of those who put their faith and trust in Him.
Yeah.
And He's seeing things before we even know that it's a problem or an issue, and making things happen. It's just like how many times did God maybe prevent us from getting in a car accident?
Yeah.
Driving to and from work or something like that, is because like He's taking care of stuff before, and then we don't even know about it. Like He's already taking care of it.
Or things that we think are problems are actually solutions.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's the craziest thing.
Yeah. Well, ever since you've given your life over to serve Jesus, has there ever been like a scripture that you've clinged on to that you're just like, okay, like I need this in this moment?
Definitely Psalm 91.
Yeah. Read it for us, if
All
you don't
right.
mind.
Got it right here. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely He will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. If you say, "The Lord is my refuge," and you make the Most High your dwelling, no harm will overtake you. No disaster will come near your tent. For He will command His angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the cobra. You will trample the great lion and the serpent. Because He loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue him. I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. He will call on me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation.
Yeah, that's a good one, especially with like knowing your story and hearing it, and just finding rest and refuge in the Lord, especially like whenever you're having like those panic attacks and anxiety. Knowing that if I just let the Lord embrace me, then He's gonna keep me from harm. And
Yep.
that's so good.
and giving it over to the Lord. It's the hardest thing I do, and I got to do it every day. And
He even says he's gonna not let you stub your toe.
yeah.
That's great. Like he's like, look, see, I got you. Man, dude, I appreciate you taking the time and just sharing your story and what God has done and what He is doing in your life. And I'm just so excited to be, along with you in this journey and support you in any which way I can and continue our great conversations that you and I have. You're in some of the best hands ever with Scott. Like, he's such a good dude. And, yep. Like,
Yeah.
you're very fortunate.
Yeah. I know it.
I wish I had a Scott, like whenever I was getting started. All righty.
My favorite part.
You've been looking forward to this the whole time. You're like, yeah, I'll tell my story if I get to do a mystery meat question. So for those of you that don't know what it is, what a mystery meat question is, it's just like a potluck. They always have a mystery meat dish there, and sometimes you want to take a chance, and maybe it's a good dish. Sometimes it's bad. We just don't know. It all goes in the jar. We shuffle it up. I'm actually getting pretty low. I need to come up with some new ones. Ooh, this is a good one. All right. Would you rather have front row tickets to a musician you've never heard of or listen to your favorite band perform from the parking lot?
Ooh. Definitely the front row tickets, even if I don't know them, because hopefully it's a good show. But I'm going to enjoy it a whole lot more than sitting in a parking lot.
Yeah. Well, and you can't say that you were ever there, even if you were in the parking lot.
Yeah.
I have some bucket list concerts that I would love to go to, and Coldplay is one of them. And you can't just go watch. You can't just oh yeah, man, I went to the Coldplay concert. You're like, wow, where did you sit? You're like, in my car from the parking lot. You weren't there.
I was in the same city as them.
Yeah, you can't do that. I think I would do the same thing and just hopefully it's a good show. I've seen some random stuff though on the internet, like of terrible musicians.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Just slap an avant-garde sticker on it. It's good.
That's what they do. Like, this is just, whatever comes to my mind today. And then they got some lady playing a violin while she's yodeling. And it's like, what? Like, what? Like, I don't want to be front row. I should have picked the concert from the parking lot. So it's almost kind of like a crapshoot. It's just like you don't know what you're going to get.
That's the real question. Do you have to sit through the whole thing if it's not good?
Oof. I don't know. Funny story. So my mom and dad, my dad got my mom tickets to Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake.
Oh, yeah.
The ballet.
Yep.
And so it's a ballet. They have the orchestra there and ballerinas, and they do their ballet dancing, and they're dancing around, and there's no talking, and it's just like you have to watch this thing, and that's
makes you feel a bit trapped.
Well, here's the thing. So my dad got my mom tickets because it was something that she always wanted to go to. They sit down, they go through 45 minutes, and they stop everything. Everybody's applauding. My dad's like, man, I don't know if I could do that again. And my mom goes, well, what are you talking about? Like, why are you standing up? He's like, it's time to go. Like, it's over. And she was like, no, this is just intermission. And my dad's like, I have to go through another 45 minutes of these people, like, not singing or talking or anything, and I have to put the story together with them flapping their heels together. He was so mad.
Great.
Yeah, he was so mad. So that was, yeah. I bet you he wishes he was in the parking lot.
Yep.
Like, in one of his, like, my mom and my dad's favorite bands is this old 70s band called Bread.
Oh, yeah, Bread.
And
Yep.
so I bet you he probably wishes he would watch that concert from the parking lot. Oh, weird story. Right?
It's a good one, though. It was a good one.
Hey, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Will, for sharing your testimony. We'll throw you in the routine, the roundup, the list. What am I trying to go with, Anna? She's like, I don't know. Anyways, we love you. Thank you so much. See you next Friday. Thank you so much for listening in with us today. We really appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram. You can also watch the video version of this on YouTube as well. All you have to do is search up the Pastor's Potluck Podcast. From all of us here, we want to say thank you, and we'll see you next week.